Hello, investors. This is Todd Thomas, Associate Portfolio Manager with Revere Asset Management. Today is Saturday, November 29th. The time is 9:34 a.m. Coming to you from Boca Raton, Florida to bring you the Revere Roundup weekend walkthrough. Starting with the trend gauge, we have the four coveted green arrows on the market leaders, the short-term 21 EMA, the 50-day simple moving average, as well as the 200 simple moving average. Last week, we were in the neutral on the leaders, the short term, and the medium term. But on Tuesday of this week, we overcame those averages and closed with the strongest Thanksgiving week since 2012. Going through the indexes, the Big 8 was up 5.07%, the RG8 6.22%, the S&P 3.73%, RSP 3.11%, Qs 4.95%, equal weights 3.85%, Dow 3.18%, midcaps 3.93%, Russell 2000 5.52%, 60/40 2.13%, GROTECTION 2.88%, and TurboTection up 3%. Going through what happened last week, all indexes and proxies stage a strong rebound and reclaim of their 50-day moving averages on Tuesday of this week after spending the prior week every day below that key 50-day. This week was the strongest Thanksgiving week performance since 2012 with a broad-based recovery from the prior week. Meta announced on Tuesday their interest in diversifying their reliance on NVIDIA processors with Google's Tensor processing units, TPUs, which are custom chips that Google's developed with Obgo. And as a result, Google and Obgo were up on the week. Net issues making new highs outnumbered issues making new lows all week, reversing the trend of new lows over the past couple weeks. CME FedWatch is now showing an 86.4% chance of a December 10th rate cut, with favorable economic data showing tariffs hadn't impacted core producer prices this week. Earnings winners include Analog Devices, SMTC, Abercrombie & Fitch and Urban, and the retailers, Keysight, Symbotic, and PACS. Losers include ZS, Burlington, Dix, Botanix, and Ambarella. This is a chart of the net new highs and lows overall. We can see every day this week we had net new highs after some pretty nasty concentration and losses over the prior week and a half, as well as a couple weeks before that. So we're going to want to see this continue. And overall, with this big reclaim of the 50-day and strong push through, it looks like seasonality is finally kicking in, and we're coming into the strongest parts of the year. Big gains in Credo, which reports earnings next week, up 33%. Mining stocks had an extremely strong week in gold and silver. Celestica, proxy for AI, extremely strong. PACS, SoFi coming back up, and some contract manufacturers and lemonade. On the downside, well, when your bottoms are positive, that's a pretty good sign, with just a couple negative leaders on the week. Earnings reports next week, some pretty key names, as we mentioned: Credo, Mongo, American Eagle, CrowdStrike, Marvell, Salesforce, Dollar Tree, Five Below, Macy's, Snowflake, and Airgain. So definitely some strong numbers coming out, some key companies, and this is the companies by day. Lots of economic data this week, which are going to be important, starting off with the PMI for the global PMI in construction and ISM manufacturing. On Wednesday, the only employment report we're getting, still with the government being shut down, impacting our monthly employment numbers, is the ADP employment change, which is going to be all the Fed is going to have to base their December rate cut on. Also, industrial production capacity utilization, ISM services, We are going to get jobless claims. And then on Friday, we get the Fed's PCE price number, which is a big number for the Fed's inflation. So overall, and finally capping off the week with the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment. Big week there, which doesn't look like we're going to have an impact on the chances of a December cut unless some of these numbers just come extremely strong. Going to the charts, we are also at the end of a month. So we're going to go through both the weekly and the monthly gains on all these indexes. On the week, again, reclaim that 10-week moving average this week, up 3.73%, closed the month up about 8.89% to another monthly closing high. On the daily, you can see on Tuesday, we reclaimed those key moving averages and just accelerated into the end of the week for a strong holiday week. RSP just sitting now right up into this breakout level, up 3.11%. Again, looking to hopefully get through that 192.33 level. On the month, the RSP was up 3.6%. As breadth was weak most of the month, but did recover strongly over the last 5 trading days. Q's up 4.95 on the week and down 9.82% on the month. Or I'm sorry, 1.56% on the month. And reclaim the 10-week moving average. Equal weight was up 3.84 on the week and down 1.5 on the month. And the Dow Jones up 3.18 on the week and 0.32% on the month. And the mid cap up 3.93 on the week and 1.92% on the month. Again, getting back up to the high of this range after some lackluster performance. Russell 2000, big week, up 5.52, and on the month, up 0.85%. Now let's go back to the S&P. I believe I gave you the wrong monthly number there. Yeah, that was up 8, so 0.13, so not 8% on the month. Going to the VIX. VIX down big, which is what we like to see. Down 30% to 16.35. Again, we want a VIX below 20, and certainly in that 15 to 16 range is the sweet spot. Not so important on the month, but dollar index down 0.7% on the week as we backed off of that key 100 level that we were above last week, continuing to face resistance on the dollar at that declining 200-day moving average. Gold, huge standout this week, up 3.64% and up 5.37% on the month as we're building this flat base. GDX up 13% on the month or on the week, and up 15.5% on the month. Gold miners pretty much the biggest and strongest group of this past week. Silver making new all-time highs. If we go back on the monthly, traded through this level from 2011 that we've been keying on. That high was 48.35, and we are now at 51.21, so breaking through multi-year levels. And I believe these levels also are being challenged from way back into the 90s. So silver making new all-time highs, and the gold to silver ratio is at pretty much an extreme level, which means silver could be the leader for a while, potentially, as gold has far outpaced silver. Bitcoin with a little bit of a recovery on the week, up 8.21%. And as we pointed out, held support from the Trump post gap here and traded record volume on the IBIT last week. So potentially looking like a flush out capitulatory bottom and a potential rally and recovery ahead for Bitcoin. The bond ETF was up 0.35% as yields dropped this week. The 20-year bond proxy was also up 0.79%. The 30-year yields were down 5 basis points at 4.66, and the 10-year was down 4.6 basis points at 4.017. Again, getting close to those October lows and just flirting right around that 4% level. Not able to crack that 4% on the week. Mags up 5.2%, and on the month down 1.77%, as several of the Mag 7 struggled this past month. Going through the Mag 7 individuals, Apple was up 2%, up 3% on the month. Amazon down 4.5% on the month, up 5% on the week as it held the 200-day moving average and recovered all of its averages this week. Incidentally, Amazon has an event on Monday in Vegas for Amazon Web Services where they may be releasing potential new products and services for Amazon Web Service, so could be a potential catalyst for Amazon to continue its recovery. Microsoft bounced off that 200-day moving average this week and closed up 4.21% on the week and down almost 5% on the month. Meta also recovered off the bottom of this base, up 9%, as they also announced they may be using Google's AI custom chip. On the month, down or basically flat. So if we look at the daily chart, still below all the key moving averages, but recovering off this, as we may see a black cross coming up if this stock doesn't start gaining some momentum here. NVIDIA down 1.05% on the week and 12.5% on the month. So definitely the weakest name, as this Google now represents a potential threat to the AI ecosystem, as apparently this Google chip is a serious contender. And Google up 6.14% on the week and 13.8% on the month. So just going through those, Netflix below all key averages, up 3%, but a weak recovery. Tesla had a decent week, up almost 10%, still below the 50-day moving average, but had a decent day on Friday, down 5.7% on the month, but basically close to these all-time highs here and could potentially break out in time as full self-driving and humanoid robots are potentially a future tailwind. And that is it for the charts and the inter-asset correlation. Just wanted to take a quick look at the ETFs on the week to look at the biggest weekly change, and silver and gold leading the week as we went through. Excuse me. And gold up 13%, and platinum up 10%. So metals leading. Uranium recovered 8.8% on the week. And rare earth, REMX, this is a ETF with holdings in ALD as well as SQM, and building a cup base here. MP also a component of this. GROTECTION and TurboTection have a stake in this ETF as well. Semiconductors up 8% on the week. IBD 50 recovered, but still below all its averages, up 7%. Losers on the week here. No losers. UNG down or up at least at 0.6%, and basically consumer staples. So not much, nothing down on the week. Let's go to our one more thing before we close out this segment. Let's look at the monthly liquid all-stars on the week. I love to look at the screen because it just shows me how the potential for these stocks to gain week after week, month after month. PACS with the leading monthly gainer. A couple biotech stocks here. Sedera, Light, number 5 on the list. Talking to the team this week, look at the month after month gain in Light every single month, with capping off the most recent with a 61% gain this month. So Light just had a huge week, up 27% this week. If we look at just some of the other top 10 names, Exact Sciences, this is a biotech with a strong 60% gain on the month. Guardian Health, which Don took a position in on Friday. Potentially, if we look at the monthly on this, second big month on this, but you can see from Light, once these get going, they can definitely keep going month after month. And Don taking a position off that slight pullback to the 80 MA. This has been riding that 80 MA nicely. And not going to go through every one of these charts, but Comstock Resources, which we have on the watch list, GSAT, many of these are all on the watch list anyhow. So you can see ALB, Illumina, several of these names on the watch list. So let's get into that watch list and go through that. Sorted by the biggest gainers for the week. Symbotic with a big earnings pop this week. Basically came in with a slight beat in line, but the stock reversed after trade. It was trading relatively flat after hours and then gapped up and just ran to a new 52-week and all-time high. So again, big Walmart, their biggest customer, huge week, up 56% on the week. Cipher Mining, second biggest leading stock in the watch list, up 43%. Many of these data center names are weak, but as Bitcoin perhaps recovered, as well as the fear of a slowdown in AI has waned, this has recovered all its key moving averages. There's still some like IREN, which aren't looking too good, below the averages, not able to get off. Another one that just doesn't look good right now, CoreWeave, just languishing down here. And there's a couple other names, but overall, that is a mixed group, but Cipher with leading that group with a big recovery. TeraWolf also looks pretty good. AG, First Majestic Silver, up 36% on earnings here. And actually earnings a couple weeks ago, but look at the massive earnings growth and sales growth coming on this. This thing trades about 70 times earnings, but looking at 91% earnings growth through 2026. Just huge earnings and sales growth here. Credo with a huge comeback, up 33% this week, with earnings coming next week after cracking through that 50-day moving average, spending a couple weeks below it. Very strong recovery back through it, heading into earnings on, I believe, Monday afternoon. Light, talked about Light. Hecla Mining, this is a gold and silver miner. And again, just massive earnings, triple-digit earnings growth and strong sales. So this group definitely looking strong and leading the market this week. Celestica, strong rebound off that 10-week moving average, up 22%. PACS, this is a skilled nursing facility operator and just had a amazing gap and run this week on earnings, kicking it out of this huge bottoming type base. Have not gone through that earnings report, but that was a very strong 21% gain. Bloom Energy recovering that 10-week moving average, up 21% this week. And again, back above the 50, 21, and 8-day moving averages by Friday. Also a pretty steep trend line break here, but, very nasty sell-off from 147 down to about 75. So cut basically in half. So, but still good looking chart just because of how extended it was. Canadian Solar with a 19% recovery. Basically held that 10-week moving average. Again, an extremely extended name, pulled back, and strong rebound this week. TTMI, contract manufacturer tied to the Google chip, up 19%. SoFi recovery, up 17%. Reddit finally recovering the 10-week moving average as well as the 50-day. Now that 50-day starting to flatten out. Really gapped through on no news. After this earnings failure, very strong earnings report here. Just couldn't get through and wasn't ready to get through that 50-day moving average, backed off. Huge hammer reversal candle at the bottom here. Retest. This is probably actionable. This has been a tough stock, but definitely extremely strong earnings growth. As you can see, 50, 40, 30, some deceleration, but very strong, and two more quarters of triple digit and strong earnings ahead. Go here, and an optical leader up 17% this week, almost at all-time highs. Very strong day on Friday. This is a TurboTection holding. Fabrinet, another contract manufacturer, up 17%. Western Digital held that 10-week moving average. Semtech, this had earnings last week. This was particularly notable as it shook out below all its averages heading into earnings, then had a retest, higher low, and big recovery almost in the pivot zone. So I would say this is definitely a strong earnings reaction, reversal, and building up into this this flat base pattern with some decent action here. GGL, this is an Argentinian bank, and this is one that gapped up on political elections. Again, was looking very rough heading into earnings, gapped above that 50-day, came back, retested the 21, and had a very strong move back above that 50-day moving average. So, I'm sorry, 200-day moving average, as it's been above the 50 now from this gap. But this is potentially actionable as a reclaim of that average. And again, sometimes when something comes from a very weak chart pattern, declining averages, gaps and runs, you're going to get some natural overhead resistance selling, and then a back off. And now I identified this as a potential buy, did not take it this week, but that was actionable in my opinion as a alternative to technology. Lemonade, very strong, up 15% this week. Tower Semi, another name that had a strong earnings gap a couple weeks ago and new all-time highs this week. Not all-time highs, but highs going back to 2002 on this name. Very strong, up 15% this week. MRVL with a reclaim of its averages and earnings coming out on Tuesday of next week, up 15%. They make the custom chips for Amazon. So Avgo makes the custom chips for Google. Marvell makes the custom chips for Amazon. Marvell is a much smaller player, and it's much choppier chart pattern. Eldorado Gold with a huge breakout, up 15%. Looking at these earnings, trading at 18 times earnings with 182% growth, very strong. Kinross Gold, another name breaking out to new highs, up 15% on the week. CommScope, we've identified this name after the earnings gap, broke out this week, had a strong breakout on Monday, never looked back. Keysight, another earnings gap and run, actually not a higher high yet, but strong earnings gap, a little bit of pullback tightness here on big volume, so that's notable. And decent earnings and sales ahead, not a barn buster, but definitely a good-looking cup with handle breakout. Sienna, recovery off that 10-week, first test of the 10-week, up 14%. This is a Toddzilla and Turbo holding. We bought this stock on the reclaim of that 21-day moving average this week. Teradyne, up 14%. This was another strong earnings gapper. I got shaken out of this as it came back through that 8 and 21-day moving average. I personally did not buy this back, but Turbo bought a position in this on Thursday on the reclaim of that 21-day moving average. Extremely strong chart. Analog Devices with a good earnings pop, up 14% this week. And basically on earnings, had a sell-off, quick recovery, and breakout. So very strong post-earnings reaction on Analog Devices. Semiconductors looking extremely strong across the board. Micron, first test of that 50-day moving average, up 14% on the week. Toddzilla and Turbo and GROTECTION all in this stock on that reclaim of the 21-day moving average. Brinker International, not a great chart, but I just wanted to include this to show the strong recovery, up 41% on the month after it tested its 24-month moving average. and reclaimed all the short-term moving averages post-earnings here from a couple weeks ago. Just once that interest rate cut became probable again, you started seeing this in many stocks, and that's a great sign for the market. That risk is back on. WGS finally breaking out, up 13.2% in the cancer diagnostic and testing area. Just strong move all week from Monday on. Barrick Mining, another gold miner, Sunrun in the solar area, building up a base here. AMAT, new highs going back to March of 2024. Veritiv with a strong move back through that 10-week moving average and back through the 50-day moving average. So potentially actionable there. Viavi is another optical stock showing strength. This is a Toddzilla holding. Bought this stock on really that bounce off the 21-day this week, looking pretty strong. Liquidia. This is a biotech that turbos in. Pointed this out for its extreme sales and earnings growth. And this is a name that I also wish I had taken a position into this pivot zone, as it's been on my list now for the past few weeks. Solera, this is a oil and gas chemical company reclaiming the 10-week. Transmedics with this nice base that Ted's been talking about, right into that pivot zone, and looking like potential buy here as it spent 3 tight days right into that pivot zone. SanDisk with a recovery up 11%. Turbo and Grow took a position in this on that 21-day reclaim. We'll see if that can follow through, but it's definitely been a strong leader that's backed off. Didn't quite test the 10-week moving average, but definitely one of the strongest memory stocks. Form Factor recovered up 11% after this big earnings gap week. ALB, another new 52-week high, as it's in a solid new stage 2 uptrend after a multi-year decline here. This lithium group has been very strong and definitely leading. Comstock Resources, this is a natural gas play. Toddzilla bought this on Thursday through this tightness. Again, you got an Nance formation, a pullback basically to the 21-day. Traded really tight, closes right on that 80 MA. So I bought this on Thursday and added to it on the higher high breakout of this little flag pattern that it's kind of traded in for a while. This and EXE had a very good week. Macy's strong breakout here. Earnings coming out next week, as a lot of these retailers have been extremely strong. Teva follow through from their earnings gap 4 weeks ago. ATEC, this is the spinal stock that's been on the list now since its earnings gap. If we look at the daily here, had that strong gap, ants formation as it marched right up to the right side of that cup with 3-4 day handle, gap up, retest of the 21-day moving average, and launch off the 21-day. So extremely strong numbers coming up on the earnings front, decent sales growth as well. Wheaton Precious Metal with a cup with handle breakout, very strong. Look at this one, 70, 30, 90% plus growth with 48 times earnings. That's why these mining stocks are strong. Again, metal prices are up. These companies are going to make a fortune. Dycom follow through with up 10%. New holdings, Toddzilla finally getting some progress on this buy, as it's had several false breakouts back here, here. Decided to pull back into the 50-day moving average. Tried again, faked everyone out. Another pullback to that 50, but we kind of talked about how this has gotten a little bit tighter, a little bit of a VCP pattern here. And its ability to make a big run into that pivot zone. So I took a position as it broke through 16 on Tuesday, actually, and that finally making some progress here. So this is a name, again, it's a Brazilian fintech company, but look at these strong sales and accelerating earnings coming up for, again, 34 times earnings. So you can see that on the weekly, just a beautiful breakout. So we'll see. Comfort coming out of this little flag pattern here. For solar, strong week up 9%. It's riding right along that 10-week moving average nicely. Hammer Sports, as we're starting to see retail and the consumer stocks come back to life. Look at the huge week on earnings, strong accumulation. Again, you had this move here, and then it went into a basing pattern for a while. Another strong earnings report, tried to go, pulled back in, form this cup base. It's a very attractive pattern here. Still working on that right side, but you had that trend line break on earnings and some earnings follow through. So maybe look for some tight action and another setup here. But this has got very strong earnings and sales growth coming. Very strong. Southern Copper up 8% on the week. Dollar Tree. This has earnings coming out next week. Not a very exciting stock, but broke out of this cup with handle this week. This is the name that Turbo and Grow are in, and ALB and QM are big positions in this, as well as MP. So let's take a quick look at MP. Below all its key averages, but if you go back and look, this is when the government announced they're taking a big stake, backstopping, again, back here too, backstopping and guaranteeing pricing as well as purchases of all the product they can produce. Came back down, retested this, bounced off of that support, came back in, double bottom. So well below its averages, but decent double bottom type base. We break through these highs and it's declining 50-day moving average. That could be an actionable buy point in this. Or you can just buy the REMX, which has several of these nice positions in it. Quanta Services with a 8% gain on the week. This is a big power plant and grid builder. SQM, 4 up weeks in a row here, up 8%. GEV getting tight here down at the lower end of the space. We're watching this for a nice high volume move through these levels. All their product, turbines are sold out through the end of 2028. I believe they have an analyst conference coming up on December 5th or right around that area, where they could release some positive guidance. So that could be a catalyst. Keep an eye out for that. We'll look up the exact date, but it's somewhere over the next week or two. AEIS with a move off that 10-week moving average. Anglo Gold Ashanti with a nice breakout follow on. Snowflake earnings this week. Broke that 10-week moving average last week and basically right on that 10-week. So we'll see if earnings can be a catalyst. Closed above the 50-day moving average, but below that 21 EMA. Amphenol continued strength. Global Star really just flagging up here. Alphabet up 6.85% on the week. AMD closed right on that 10-week moving average. Held this gap after a couple shakeouts below it, and right below that 50-day moving average still. So still trying to hang on there. Again, I stopped out after some offensive selling. I stopped out of the rest of mine. Sold some on the break of the 21-day, and then finally this break of the 50-day moving average. EQT, Turbo took a position in this. This looks very strong. Nice base. Comstock Resources and EQT. It's got a little bit stronger situation here. These highs go back to 2014, and that high was around 60.68. Right around 60 right now, but coming up on those highs, coming back to 2013-14 here. So watch out for that breakout. Very strong sector. NBT holding that 10-week. Wesco International with earnings, gap, consolidation, and break through the highs. So this is an interesting player in the electric grid area. Steel Dynamics, steel stock showing some strength this week, up 6%. GMed building this big cup base. It's very strong. And the monthly up 50% on the month. So that's the first major up month on huge volume. So that's a name definitely to keep your eye on in the biotech area. Medical products. Actually, they're another spinal stock. spinal products. Wayfair, with a nice 5% gain. Been talking a lot about this standing out. Cummins up 5%. Next, Power. This is a solar energy stock up 5% on the 10-week. Hexcel in the materials area with a strong 5% follow through. Walmart earnings here the week before last, just setting up in this tight base with a 5% gain last week. Nucor in the steel area looking to potentially extend itself out of this base. Cat flagging up here. Bright Springs Health, that's in the nursing or pharmacy area, up 4.5%. Compass Xometry held that 10-week moving average after a test of the 50-day. Definitely showing some support off that 50-day with closes in the upper range on that 50-day test, breaking back up into the pivot zone. Another biopharma stock on medical services here, genetic testing up 3.5%, a little extended. JFrog looks very good and trading basically in a 3-week tight pattern here, and just riding along that ADMA after this big high volume earnings gap. Again, I pointed out all of a sudden 3 flagship funds taking positions in the last quarter after not having any positions. So I think that's pretty notable, and this is showing relative strength. Guardian Health, another big monthly winner, up 16% after the prior month, looking at a gain of 48%. This is potentially a new leader in the biotech area, and Don took a starter position in this on that pullback to the ADMA. Baker Hughes in this tight base. FTI just continuing to ride along this week after week gain. Insight, another biotech with a huge volume breakout on earnings and trading in basically a 3-week, 4-week tight pattern. UTHR with an ascending base breakout. The PPH, again, we pointed this out several weeks in a row. ICER up 2% on the week. Another biotech, AstraZeneca, another pharmaceutical. This is a position Todd Zilla took this week. This is the South Korean ETF. Basically bought this coming off the 50-day moving average. And the reason I bought this is because 40% of this index is in Samsung and SK Hynix, which are the largest memory chip makers in the world. And we really have no way of buying these companies in the US except for through that ETF. So this Korean index has been extremely strong after this breakout of this base. Big run, pull back to the 10-week. So took that position off the 10-week. Penumbra, just building a base. Marathon Petroleum building this big cup with handle base. Helizyme, not able to really make much progress. Eli Lilly, strong follow through. MedPace, just trading tight. Jazz Pharmaceutical, another stock Todd Zilla took a position in this week. Bought this on Friday on this 3-day pullback. And my stop would be probably if it can't make progress beyond this low of 173.73. So very low risk. Again, I may give it down to here. We'll see. Arginex, another very strong biotech. ONC, this pulled back to the 50-day interday, held that 50-day on Monday, and really just kind of traded off of that. Leaderboard took a position in this, then got stopped out of it. But watching this for a potential trend line break, as look at the earnings and sales on this name, extremely strong. And that's it for the watch list. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving week and a wonderful holiday on Thursday. Coming into the strongest Santa Claus rally period time. And have a great weekend. If you have any questions, my email is todd@revereasset.com. My Twitter handle is @toddmichael70. Give us a like, follow on our YouTube channel as we put out awesome content every single day of the week except for Sunday. Have a great week, and we will talk to you next week.